Yeah, you know, so I don't actually spend that much time thinking about this, even if it seems like I do. Hey Kim. Hey Kim. How are you?
Chris, how's it going?
They just raise it.
I was walking over here thinking at some point I'm gonna email Chris and say, when is there a volleyball game that we can go?
I asked today, and it's like travel.
First 3 weeks.
Then,
That's actually good, because this week isn't good for me anyway.
it's okay. I would happily travel with that. So at least some games that was allowed.
You should.
Every day. But I feel like some spicy.
That is one of those seasons to me that can get attached.
Yes. Yeah.
Not it right, because I think that they're playing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Those, I have a hard time with, because I don't have my head up straight for at least. So this could be.
Could be good. Could be good.
How's it going? Transition's been heavy on me. It's like week 2 and I'm still starting. At the end of the day, I'm just like exhausted already. That does not go well. It's good sign. Yeah, it's ramped up.
I think my one request is gonna be, you're not housed, that's a major gathering.
Hmm.
What
happened? It was working and it's not working. Well, and that's something to that point as well. It's like there's so much churn in that first 2 weeks. So like I gave a quiz in my class today, and 2 students had never been there because they asked me yesterday. And I was like, yeah, that's my bad. You guys don't worry about this quiz. Like, yeah, I should have thought of that.
What do we do? 'Cause I usually teach foundational concepts in the first grade. So they missed that.
No more foundational concepts.
Well, also like I actually think back to the Steel Center series on like the liberal arts last fall, JV, and I feel like this started like what is liberal arts, other things kind of like that, because there's a temptation sometimes, not just liberal arts, higher education is just transactional, and I don't love that, but also at the same time I do think like, well, you paid for this professional service, I didn't, and so on day 1 or something. Otherwise, I'm studying. Like, and I don't articulate it that way, and I know that it's not like that, and you should also resist that kind of transactional like this. But it does lurk within my mind. So I'm like,
Well, do you really tread water?
I would
What would be, and yeah, that's sort of what the ad date suggests, right?
It's earlier than it used to be. Because like and also it's not so much the content that really needs to be evaluated, it's really the lines of like, let's all get on the same page. Like we have commitments right away. And so if you're motivated by assessments, I can do that. It was just nothing else. There are probably creative solutions. 2 weeks of icebreakers. 2 weeks. Oh boy, I struggled at 10 minutes. I already know I'm first. I'm
And then you have the guy who
I
I was.
Like, see how it works.
Help desk is coming. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah. Literally no idea. And then yeah, the party, yeah, and it was like, that's good.
It's not Zoom stuff. Okay, so it's just
Like when they.
I know it was working.
And then
It's not working now. I can't We're waiting on.
Oh, I mean,
What do we need the computer from?
Yeah, 4 years old.
So what do you want to do?
We could just skip the. Can you skip the PowerPoint?
Okay, well, counseling is kind of most of it, but we're gonna start with the conversation.
Okay, cool.
I'm a historian, context takes time.
Yeah.
Okey-dokey. Hey, y'all. Have some Toast-Its. We're at. So we're aiming for some small group conversation. Maybe some here. Can somebody pass the basket back? All right, so let me give you a ballpark idea of what's going on today, right? And sort of the scope of the project that we're doing this year. All right, so welcome to Bridges Over Harkrider. Okay, some of y'all of a certain age will recognize Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water, right? That was supposed to be our background music for a few minutes here, right? And so, yeah, so we all are familiar with Harkrider, right? And essentially the big scary road, right, that goes down the middle of our campus, okay? Harkrider functions, basically what I'm going to do is a historical comparison to 1960s urban planning, right? That's going to get us to a conversation about our campus, right? We've got a geographical boundary, right? That's very hard to cross, right? Like it's hard to get from one side to the other, right? You have to take the little bitty footbridge or the tunnel underneath. It's hard, right? We all know this. The geographical barrier becomes also a social barrier as well, right? So faculty and coaches have been having some conversations, and we realized that we don't ever get to talk to each other anymore, right? It is so difficult to cross over that geographical boundary, right? That the grown-ups, right, who are in charge of kind of making things work on campus, right, are siloed, right, and not able to have conversations, right? To a certain extent, we've also got student activities kind of siloed into these two parts of the campus, right? Where we've got on the one side, we have beautiful athletic facilities and nature trail and stadium, okay? And many people, students and staff who spend most of their time over there, right? And have to, it's necessary for them to do their jobs, right? And then we have everything else, right? Which is the side of campus that we're sitting on now. Okay, so yeah, and that's everything from academic buildings to student life and technology center to residence halls to even counseling services, right? And public safety, right, are mostly on this side. Okay, so now okay, I got my PowerPoint. Good, because visuals are really helpful here. All right. The talk that I'm going to give today is building Team Hendrix Go Warriors. Okay. So the Bridges Over Harkrider series is going to have a bunch of other people speaking, and some of those folks are here in this room, right? So we're going to have Coach Amy Weaver speaking for us. We're going to have Dr. William Hagan-Champazy. We're going to have Dr. Kim Maslin, Dr. Terry Bonebright, right? Possibly some other all-stars lined up for this semester, right? So this is going to occur on Wednesday afternoons. Okay, and so the first one, the first one is how we build Team Hendrix, right, in view of this geographical barrier. Okay, thanks to everyone, right? So just shout outs to James Dow and Tammy Vanneman and the Steel Center. Special thank you to Coach Amy Weaver and Provost Terry Garrett and Christy Coker and lots and lots and lots of other people, right? The students who just troubleshooted the, the IT system, Bobby Angler-Young, all that stuff. Thanks to everyone, right? Yeah, hello. Alrighty, now we remember, we're just starting a conversation, and I don't know how far we're gonna get in the conversation for today, right? So we're just starting a conversation. We're not making any decisions today, right? Like this group, this body has no decision-making authority whatsoever, right? We're starting a conversation. I'm gonna give us some historical context, right, to frame our understanding. Okay, keep in mind that historical context is also shaped by my own memory, right? And historians can tell you memory is flawed, right? So memories of one person might not overlap with more than one, right? And I think a really important ground rule in any liberal arts conversation is no monsterizing, right? Like no group of people on campus is evil, right? Or wanted to create two halves of the campus, right, and kind of divide everything. Nobody is that nefarious, right? And so we're not going to monsterize groups of people, right? People who work and play and live on any side or all sides of these boundaries. There's no monsters here. Okay, so what the heck is urban renewal, and what does it have to do with Hendrix? Okay, so I gave you a lowdown on sort of a background on urban renewal already, and also bear with me, right? I usually say that when terms become very boring, it's usually because powerful people are involved making decisions that actually affect a lot of people's lives. Okay, so some of you may recognize this guy. Okay, he's actually the only villain I'm going to share with you today. And so, yeah, one villain, Mayor Richard Day Daley of Chicago. So some of you might know that he presided over the Democratic National Convention and nominating convention in 1968, where there was a huge riot. The riot happened all over the city, and both inside the convention building and outside the convention building. Okay, Daley, okay, to be fair, did not start the riot, right? But he also handled it really badly. Let's say he escalated it badly, and it became incredibly embarrassing. Really, the only people who were happy with this were Republicans, because like, yes, all right, the Democrats have shown themselves incapable of running a convention, let alone a country. Okay, so yeah, that's Richard Day Daley. All right, some roads to look at. So one of the things that he did was build some highways, right? Over here is the Dan Ryan Expressway in Chicago. It's as horrible as it looks. It's miserable to drive on. It's usually a parking lot, nobody moves. You know, it takes you like 5 hours to get to O'Hare Airport. It's a miserable road, okay? So building the Dan Ryan, right? In order to build this road, right, the mayor essentially, they went through neighborhoods that were of people that had low income, okay, people that were not politically powerful, and hit especially hard in neighborhoods of racial minorities. Okay, Daley's specific goal was to break the back of the West Side Black community, right? And so here's the thing, yeah, because they didn't vote for him, or not enough, right? Many of, yeah, they're not on his side, right? So this is how you destroy a community, right? You plow it up, you tear up businesses, you destroy people's housing, people literally can't communicate anymore, can't get together, can't talk, then they can't talk, they can't union, they can't organize, right? If they can't organize, they can't fight you politically. So this is really convenient for one person, right? And that would be the mayor. I-630, some of y'all may know, has a similar history to it. I would not be really shocked if Route 30 didn't have that going on as well. Also in Little Rock. Okay, so yeah, so there is some nefariousness going on there. It's usually by politicians. Okay, all right. So this is our campus map, right? So we know this already, but I love this map. I think it must be communications office, but it kind of shows right up the middle, right? And we've got our two halves. Okay. Now, as far as I know, nobody built Harkrider trying to do this, right? You know, though I don't know the larger, I don't know the larger history of Conway, right? Nobody was trying to do this, right? At the time that facilities were growing and expanding, right? This was a gorgeous piece of land that the college already owned, right? And could build on, right? And so the Wellness and Athletic Center were built about the same time. The SLTC were built, the nature trail was expanded, Hendricks Village started to emerge, right? All that was happening at the same time. Beautiful plot of land, right? That people already really loved. Okay, nobody tried to do this, right? Nobody was trying to like break up constituencies on campus. Here we go. So, I mean, the kind of the premise underlying this is that geographical barriers can exacerbate social barriers. Okay? And we're kind of in that place. We're kind of in that place now. It is purely my experience and my opinion that I really wish we'd started to have this conversation 20 years ago when these things were being constructed, as opposed to now, 20 years later. Like this is, some of y'all in here, this is your entire lifetime, right? That we could have been having these conversations. At least the adults could have been having these conversations. And we've not had an organized way to do that, to my knowledge. Okay, so yeah, all kinds of barriers, time barriers, right? How much time you have to spend on each side, communication barriers, right? Who do you see every day in the hallway? Meeting people. I often have my students fill out questionnaires, and one of them was, you know, what's an issue that you would like us to work on, right, and to talk about. And I've had over and over again, I've had athletes saying, I don't get to meet people who are not athletes, right? Like I just don't have time, right? There's not opportunities organically built in. I love my friends, but you know, it's, you know, it just feels like, it feels kind of lonely, right? And I think vice versa, right? If for folks who are stuck on this side, getting over there is a big project, right? And has to be planned. Okay, certainly problem solving, and especially among grown-ups on the campus, right? Hard to do. Geography is making it harder. All right. Okay. A further premise, right? That the liberal arts exist, right? And y'all philosophers we could have some great argument about this sometime, right? The liberal arts, if we can't, right, start conversations among groups of people who are different, right? If we can't model that for the world, I mean, certainly the nation, you know, if we can't model that for others and train ourselves how to do it, then why do we exist? Right? What are we for? We are living in a time of tremendous polarization, which we all know, right? Like we all know that if you say the wrong thing on the internet, you could be like doomed for years, right? I mean, we all know that. The young people have grown up with that, and it's not a good place to be, right? Our politics and are dysfunctional. A lot of our communities are functional, but they just aren't talking to each other. So let me see. So yeah, just this was my castle shot. Like we've got two castles with a moat in between them, and I might honestly, we might as well have piranhas and sharks swimming around in the middle, just like with the geography that we've got. All right. So my title underneath there is a very, very brief history of sport at Hendrix. Gesundheit. So yeah, this is the thing that was supposed to take up a lot of time and that I'm only going to do very briefly. Okay, I mean, I did some research in printed materials, right, and published materials. There is not a lot, right, that's any good. By the way, this is a bunch of Odyssey projects waiting to happen, right? Is a history of different athletics on campus. All right. A really pivotal figure to keep in mind is Ivan Grove. Okay, so I had never heard of Ivan Grove. In fact, I probably had heard of him, but I didn't remember him until I started putting together this PowerPoint. Okay, so Ivan Grove was this sort of towering figure in Hendrix history, right? He was the original football coach, right? He helped to establish the football program, wearing many hats. He also directed track and field. He was basketball coach for a long time. He was athletic director. The best information on him is on the Warriors website, right? Which I urge you to check out because it's beautiful, actually. There's so much great information up there. Okay, so Ivan Grove, major towering figure. He was here at Hendrix from 1906 to 1958. Basically when he retired, okay? So nice chunk of time. It coincides almost exactly with the original football program on our campus, right? Okay, oh yeah, not sure how much I'm gonna have time for that. Oh, all right, I'm just gonna finish up with Ivan. All right, here's the thing. The football program ended in 1960, okay? And was essentially closed, right, shuttered. At least the intercollegiate football program was shuttered, okay? There's debate over why, but I think part of it was Ivan had retired, right? And there wasn't, you know, in small institutions, the person who's running things, if that person, you know, leaves, you know, retires, finds another job somewhere else, that program often shutters, right? And that is definitely part of what was going on with this. Okay. College sport in general. So many neat stories here. I can give you some. Alrighty, by the way, in published sources, I found almost nothing about women's athletics, like almost zero, right? Which was frustrating and very, very sad, right? So anyway, in America, right, the first really intercollegiate college sport that colleges invested in was field hockey, right? This is the first, it's really the first thing that women get to do that is aerobic and that where you can actually get a workout running around, right? Before this, women took gym classes, right? Usually calisthenics, like so exciting, right? Health is fine, but competition, women don't do that, right? So I have no idea what, you know, the status or history of our women's field hockey. We have field hockey?
No.
Okay.
It
Depth
was
of
very
interest, okay.
temporary.
We don't, okay, so yeah, so we don't even have it.
8 years, something like that.
Okay, so yeah, a little bit of field hockey, not much. Football, on the other hand, the exact opposite, right? Like when people do actually talk about sport at Hendrix, that's what they talk about, right? And still, that's not much, right? Among published historians. So football is becoming a sport in sort of the mid 1800s, right? And the really cool thing to know about this is that at first colleges did not recognize it as something they needed to do, right? It was in fact players, it was students, right, who loved the game, were obsessed with it, who founded clubs and started playing each other. Another fun fact I love, the very first college football match was between Princeton and Rutgers. That was like 1969, right? So it started in the Ivy League, which is hilarious, right? And so, yeah, which is, I mean, we don't associate necessarily Princeton today with football. Okay, started in the Ivy League, colleges and universities figured out that they ought to get with the program right? Because students love this, other people love to come and watch it. It's getting really popular by about 1900. Okay, yes, what is that? Oh yeah, this is a little time, this is the timeline that I just gave you, right? And this is about how football coincides, the first incarnation of the football program coincides pretty quickly with Ivan Grove's career. Okay, I'm gonna pause to take a breath and ask if there are any questions, comments, anything I can do for you. Okay, feel free to do a shout out, right? If that becomes, if that's something you are compelled to do. Okay. Hello. Oh yeah, women's sports, not at all. Oh yeah, the booster club. So ladies, you know, we were allowed to, you know, show up and cheer for the men. Woo! And then one mention of women's volleyball and swimming in 1977. So there's just lots of holes there. I'm going to take us forward in time, okay? Because this moment is actually a pivotal moment in Hendrix history, and so I'm framing it as that. I'm arguing that that is what it is. All right, now y'all have met the mask, right? The Hendrix mask. We all know this mascot, right? Pretty familiar. It's all over things now. My umbrella has it on there. Okay, we now have the mask. Okay. There he is, where you can see both sides, okay? And so here we go. Today's mascot, so mascots are weird and interesting. Today's mascot, yeah, there's so much there, and I can't do the whole thing, but so there's so much there to look at, but okay, so the mask really has only been a thing since 2019. Okay, so he actually does a good job of feeling timeless, right? When it's actually pretty new. That's something that you want college traditions to do, is create this sort of sense of timeless unity across the generations. Okay, I think our mask guy does that pretty well, right? So we've had earlier incarnations of mascots. We've had people fighting, right, over mascots as well, right? Again, this is students. This is in really before you're born, right?
Who were here
Yeah.
when this happened.
Yeah, so some of us were,
absolutely.
like, grown-ups. Yeah, oh my God, so yeah. So y'all were you students?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I showed up right after the biggest kind of
debate.
debates around
Flying
it.
squirrels versus,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
Tons of
okay.
stuff like
So
that.
this is brilliant.
Well, this is when I
real-
floated the idea of the monarchs,
The monarchs,
which would be like
butterflies.
orange and black, right? It could be like have an environmental
Good.
I love
side
that,
to it,
right?
preservation.
Fighting monarchs.
Never, totally. When you think about it, there's
Milkweed in
like,
the stands.
Yeah.
think about the mascots. Like, absolutely. Y'all remember who was the banana slugs? Somebody did the banana
UC
slugs.
Santa
I'm
Barbara.
like, lean into it, you know, like go
Cruz.
with it,
Thank you.
right?
So who made these
So
decisions?
yeah, so various ideas were floated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, various ideas were floated for this in 2000, between 2006, 2008, when the new mascot was being created. Okay, this is also the time when the football program was being created, the SLTC was being built, like lots of new stuff happening. Okay, so before the mask, we had Ivan.
Oh God.
Some of you have seen, yes, some of you have seen Ivan. Yeah, Ivan was quietly retired in 2019. Let me find Ivan. Wait, he's not showing up. There he is.
There you go.
There's Ivan.
We even had a guy
Sword.
play Ivan.
Oh, yeah, pardon?
Records.
Yes.
You had
He
what
played
now?
Ivan.
What do you have?
JD Jacobs played Ivan.
You
He
have
was Ivan.
a person.
We had an
Like a
actual
person with what?
mascot.
There's
He was on
there's
the lacrosse team.
Yes.
So he was a member of the
Yeah.
lacrosse team, and during
Right.
out of season, he would dress up and he would run around during games.
Oh, so they use the stick as a sword?
No,
Like,
he had a
he
sword.
had an actual sword.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
I remember that.
That is hilarious. Yeah, I've seen pictures. He's got this like leather breastplate, vinyl breastplate, and the sword and the hair and the face paint and the whole whoop-de-doo. Okay, so some of you may recognize this. Yeah,
Was there an older Ivan?
there's an older item. I can't, I'm not informed enough to go there
It's
today.
a long time ago, but I
It's-
think it might have.
There's a different
Okay.
warrior, you're saying. and it
So-
wasn't-
There's also,
Yeah.
there's also a book, honestly, there's a history of Hendrix that claims we were the Bulldogs. So I'm
Also
like,
in the library.
I have
Yeah.
no idea.
There's
Oh
like
my God.
t-shirts and pictures of it where it was kind of supposed to replicate a native.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why
Yeah.
we got Ivan, is
Yes.
because we had to move away from that imagery.
I was wondering if that was also.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that was only 2001, by the way, when that happened. So that was embarrassingly late that we walked away from ethnic stereotypes, right? So yeah, so this is all happening like before students here are born, yeah.
At the same time too, before this, I mean, I came here in 2011.
Yeah.
And it was the years where we were talking about football,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not sure how much of the question about what we should do with our mascot had to do
Yeah.
with whether we should have football or
It
not.
it was not.
It was unrelated, but there's
okay.
a sense in which there is a renewal of our concern
Yeah,
about athletics in that context.
well,
Because it was like a question of whether there should be football or not. That was a
Wow.
huge discussion if I,
absolutely right, right. And in my experience, and again, this is my experience only, right? The mascot argument became a proxy for the football argument.
that's what I'm.
Right, that
Okay,
like if
yeah.
people, yeah, that people fought over Ivan because, the issue of what to do with the actual sports program is really hard, right? It's legitimately hard, and scares a lot of people, right? So that's at least the premise of the argument that I'm making today, right? Is that there's other stuff people are fighting over, right? And that the mascot is, it's a trigger, right? It's a signal, it's a proxy for things people are fighting over. Okay, so you had, anybody recognize, does he look familiar? Maybe a movie, maybe a movie from like the late
Yeah.
90s, early 2000s.
So Mel Gibson.
Braveheart, yes, it's Braveheart, which like apparently there's a statue of him somewhere in Scotland, and apparently the Scots have referred to it as a great pile of shite. So anyways, he's not popular in Scotland, but all right, Mel Gibson, Braveheart. He's a freedom fighter fighting the British off for Scottish independence and saving his family and his community, and with face paint and the sword and the whole what-do-you-do. Okay, so yeah, so Ivan was also dated because it came from that cultural moment, right? And got outdated, and pop culture gets dated really fast. So it's never a really sturdy foundation. Right. Okay, so there's another candidate. You already know who it was. Drum roll, please. Let's see if we can get Ivan here. Okay, and the flying, this is the only squirrel photo that I could find, right, on the internet, right? So yeah, just a little picture of a squirrel. You're remembering, you have having squirrel memories?
No, it's just like, what happened was they solicited ideas
Mhm.
from students, right? And
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's actually where it came from. That wasn't a
Okay.
Decision, I'm super fuzzy on that because.
Okay,
So it's just like,
Yeah.
William, like the whole thing, like if you were on the athletic side, which I would, I didn't have a problem with our
Uh-huh.
frisbee team,
Sure,
doing the flying squirrels. The thing is,
Yeah.
like, I wasn't on the frisbee team.
yeah, so it's like it doesn't, this is really, yeah,
I
yeah.
also didn't want to be that.
Right,
Right?
right, I know, right, yeah, right, like,
Equally bad.
that's the thing
And
about,
worse, even worse.
it's the thing about mascots, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the thing about mascots, like, people have to be able to see themselves, reflected in the mascot. I mean, in that way, like, the mask is something, most of us could actually print the thing out and put it on,
Well, that
right?
was gonna be a
Mhm.
question, and I was going to apologize
Mm-hmm.
for getting ahead, but one of the things about the mask, right, is that
Mhm.
it, in a way, is more of a symbol than a character, right? And
Yes.
so,
Yep.
in a way, it's like, well,
Mhm.
anybody can see themselves
Yeah.
in that.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily gendered, so like if we have female identifying
Yes.
athletes, because
Hello,
maybe our female identifying
Ivan.
athletes don't
Really?
view that as being like really on your side,
Even my
Yes.
basketball friends
right?
were like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, so
I'm-
you get a mask, which
okay.
is not, but I guess
It-
part of my question here
Yeah,
is whenever
uh-huh.
you
Sure,
make it to where
Right.
it really has, let's say, a
right,
character that can be adopted by anyone.
Yes.
It doesn't have much character on its own at all.
right.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So
So,
I'm
Yeah,
curious.
yeah, I mean, I think that's a concern.
Yeah.
I also know, I've talked to communications, and their concern was that Ivan was expensive
Mhm.
to reproduce. He is complicated, he is fussy, he's hard to fit on stuff. Yeah, it costs so much more to do everything, right? So yeah, so I vividly remember the Ivan and the squirrel debate, right, and controversy. And in my argument, like the Ivan, it's in my memory at least, the Ivan and the squirrel debate had to do a lot with how people on campus identified. Right? I mean, you can probably imagine where this is going, and it's gonna include some stereotypes, right? But I'm going to talk very broadly about sort of Ivan lovers and squirrel lovers, right? And please keep in mind that these are in categories I just invented, right? Which are fluid and may not apply to anyone but me, right? But, okay, so from what I remember, right, in my experience, I can't be Ivan, right? Like, I'll never have muscles like that. Never gonna have a breastplate like that, or a sword, or look that tough. I mean, even if we had again, like showing how old I am, even if we had a Xena warrior princess to go along with Ivan, that would have been maybe a little easier to imagine, right? But there's kind of nothing here I could work with, right? I didn't even really like the movie Braveheart, so.
We're not Scottish.
But we're not Scottish. I mean, yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. I always wanted, like, Mel Gibson was a lot of things in that movie, right? He's brave. He fights for what he believes in. He's very smart, right? He wins a lot before the awful scene at the end where he's executed, right? Like, yeah. Okay, so I can see there's certain appeal here going on. Like, Kim, would you agree?
Yeah, so I mean, there were a lot of other elements of this discussion, right? The bulldogs, bringing back the bulldog was a serious conversation.
Mhm.
We contracted with artists to do sketches of about 9 different possible mascots, including some species that were indigenous to Arkansas.
Mhm.
And so it was a whole process of looking at all these designs, and how you end up with Ivan is a great question.
Yeah.
Because this is not a species that is indigenous.
Yeah, even to this continent.
I will
Yeah.
say it was also layered with conversations about, are you gonna have a mascot that's supposed to represent the women's teams that we call the lady, whatever else we have.
Mhm.
Right, that was part of the conversation, and we decided against that pretty early on in the process. And then that still leaves you with, what image do you want? And this is what we ended up with. And when I say we, I don't know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, in my experience, there was a committee that was chosen.
I was on it.
Chosen, but okay. And I mean,
It's telling that you don't know what it was.
Right.
well,
So then mysteriously, after lovely
yeah,
designs, this
was chosen. I mean, I kind of remember like as a regular faculty member, not really getting an opinion in the conversation, but I mean, so that I don't know if anyone else had that experience.
And that's key.
Yeah.
The part of the fight was, is football and our new mascot about marketing and recruitment, or is it about an expression of who we are? And that was about, does the faculty decide this, or does the administration? And that was about a power shift between those two groups that still is echoes that are still there.
So you see, like students, there are so many layers of everything happening, right? That and unpacking them is endlessly fascinating, right? But yeah, so it was, I mean, faculty and administration not agreeing on stuff, right? A lot of people feeling really unheard, right? And disrespected, frankly, disrespected in that conversation, right?
Yes.
And I mean, for me, I mean, I was totally in Team Squirrel. Like, I mean, I gotta tell you this, like, I own a set of refrigerator magnets that's like dress up squirrel. that I had hung from my door with on a cookie tin, right? And like invited students to, now here's the, I don't know if anyone played with it or even really knew what the heck I was doing with it. But I was like, I saw it in the catalog and I was like, I need this, right? We're gonna make it happen. Okay, so I was in squirrel land territory, deep in squirrel. I could still be deep in squirrel territory, and I'll talk to you why a little bit, right? I don't see myself in either, right? But so to me, the sport team squirrel was about being a safe place to be a little quirky, right? Being a safe place to be a little different, maybe not totally mainstream, right? Being a safe place to be different, right? In the many ways that our community are different, right? And unique and special, right? I mean, to me, the squirrel meant everyone is everyone, right? Everyone is a warrior squirrel, right? Like everyone belongs here. Everyone can see themselves in this icon. Now, y'all may hate the squirrel. I'm down with that, right? That's fine. You can love it, you can hate it, whatever. Right? This was my experience, right? That when we were summarily told, oh, I remember a faculty meeting where I heard the words, there will be no animals allowed at all. Human figures only, right?
I would welcome them in.
Pardon?
To every slide presentation.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. No animals. Animals not allowed. We do not like animals here. Yeah, okay.
Well, to be fair, the athletes were not team squirrel.
Not
for
so
the most
much.
part.
We
It
were
was
not.
pretty
Yeah.
uniform opposition.
And we heard, I
I
mean,
mean, it
because
wasn't
yes,
actually a squirrel thing. It was literally that like our friends on Frisbee were the flying squirrels,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so like
So it's
that's
just
what
like,
it was about. It
this
was-
is not us even.
Well,
Yeah.
and it was
uh-huh.
even like for, I don't remember like some other people on the Frisbee team were like, no, that's us.
That is their team.
That's
Oh, so
Right.
so
It's
this
their, yeah.
would be like
Not every.
kind of,
And they wanted to own that identity.
we'd be appropriating the squirrel. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I had no idea there were so many levels, right, of depth.
I
to
think
all
it's
of
actually
this,
like
right?
less complicated on the student level. It was like, no,
Yeah.
our Frisbee team is the flying squirrel.
No, I mean, for
Right.
the faculty, I mean, here's the thing, I'm speaking mostly for myself, right? But for me, this sort of clearly says athletes and everybody else, right? And y'all, I mean, basically faculty, staff, grown-ups on campus, we have been to high school, right? Which is obviously the worst of all human characteristics magnified in so many different ways, right? It's hellish. No one should have to go through it, right? Okay, a lot of folks remember being in the middle of a social hierarchy, right? And being in the middle of a social hierarchy that they were not on top of, right? This is, again, no monsterizing, no stereotypes, right? Like the kid who was mean to you in high school, that doesn't, like, there's not, the bully comes in many shapes and sizes and activities and all of that stuff. Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think one of the things that,
Mhm.
when I ask, what's the kind of felt difference between athletes and non-athletes on campus? The thing that students talk about a lot is just the cafeteria. And they'll say like athletes sit on the right-hand side together, all wearing their shirts that match.
Mhm.
And people, otherwise, non-athletes don't sit on the right side, they sit on the left side.
Mhm.
And then when I hear from non-athletes as they describe that, they see it as like exclusive. But then when I hear athletes describe it, they're like, it's not exclusive, I would sit with anyone, right? And so there's a sense that felt difference is kind of
Yeah, and
a new manifestation here in a sense, manifested in different ways. And I just wonder, is that like a good starting place to think about that difference? Yeah.
we've created optics that are not working in our favor here.
Yeah.
Right? Like anybody want to follow up on? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
As a non-athlete who
Yeah.
hangs out with almost entirely athletes
Uh-huh.
and almost always eats on the right side,
Mhm.
it's kind of noticeable that they all kind of tend to like hang out with each other.
Mhm.
But like I've had like it's been perfectly fine. I think some different
Mhm.
different people are okay with hanging out with different people, and so like me and my group of friends are all fine sitting on that side and don't get like nasty looks or
I mean, and I've even wondered, would athletes and non-athletes even feel comfortable sitting on the other side, right? Like, yeah.
Well, I'm an athlete,
Mhm.
so I noticed that
we typically tend to stay with our team because we've been with them for so long.
Yes,
Like
yes.
the football and the fall
Uh-huh.
sports return early, so
Yeah.
we're already with them
Mhm.
before all the rest of the students
Yeah.
return.
Mhm.
And like, as a swimmer myself, like, I'm with my team 24/7.
Because you have to be, right? Like you, that's how you make a team and make people better, right? At what at their what they're doing, right? They're trying to achieve and accomplish.
So it
Right.
and inevitably ends up you go to dinner together, you go to lunch together.
Yeah.
You have to wear your uniform
Mhm.
because that's what you were just at practice in.
Mhm.
This
And
is
that's
called
Uh-huh.
collective effervescence.
collective effervescence.
Right? It's not a
Okay.
social theorizing.
Uh-huh.
This feeling of
Yeah,
togetherness
just read about it.
that we experience as a
Mhm.
group, and it's like pivotal for.
Yeah.
Is what I said.
Totally.
Yeah, it's funny enough.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I like literally read about
Oh,
that.
literally, you're not
3 days
joking. That's
ago.
not sarcasm.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
during kind of.
I like that. I love effervescence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
there you
I'm
go.
all in.
No,
Okay.
I know you well enough to know that you're serious, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Uh-huh.
no, it's important to be a team together that you have that feeling of connectedness.
Mhm.
But sometimes people don't like feel it with other people.
Well-
Like if you, in a sense, you don't. If you're not a part of the group that has that feeling of togetherness, how do you join it?
You're the out group. Yeah, exactly. Right. Are
And
you-
I think that's a really important question.
Mhm.
Like, how does that happen? How do we get to the point where
Mhm.
you can feel togetherness with someone, with a group
Mm-hmm.
that has already had that mutual feeling?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also I was a peer leader this year for
Mhm.
orientation. It was the most stress
Yeah.
I've ever felt
Ah,
going
yeah.
to the cafeteria.
Uh-huh.
But that was just because I didn't know where the people I had been sitting with were. Honestly, where
Uh-huh.
it was completely full. And I
Mhm.
sit in basically the same like 5x5 split rate, 5x5
Uh-huh.
square foot radius.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question?
Mhm.
So when you were a peer leader
Mhm.
and you went into the
Mhm.
cafeteria, your lacrosse team was not necessarily there. And so you were then asking the question, where do I sit if I'm not with the lacrosse team?
Oh no, it was just a location. So like I had to sit with all the incoming freshmen. And so they would
Okay,
sit
pardon me.
somewhere in
yes.
this like completely crowded cafeteria.
You had to hunt for
And I
them.
would have to go around and I would have to find people
Hide and
and
seek.
bring
Okay.
them over and I would have to grab other
Thanks.
people.
Yeah.
Sorry, it wasn't really, I felt very nice that I did have people that I had to sit with. That was great.
Cafeteria is kind of scary like that
No,
too.
yeah, but I think it's also so
Yeah.
it's just like also like creatures have it. You want to sit in the same spot.
Mhm.
I do think that, and I also think that at Hendrix, like emulsifying is like a problem, obviously. But like I do think that a lot of people say like I, as a 5'8", 120-pound individual, will never play basketball for Hendrix.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that I will not be able to like be a part of that team. I think, and I have like classmates that I'm in class with, and like I'll like go to basketball games, and now I know a lot of them really well. And I just think it's the first step that is like very, very scary, especially when you're looking at a group of people that are already established. But I don't think I've ever met someone that was like, yeah, this like person that definitely does not play sport showed up to my game.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Just trying way
Yeah.
too hard.
Yeah. Like I'm saying, nobody's out there deciding like how do we exclude people who major in art history, right? Like nobody's plotting that way, right? But I mean, it's our geography does that. Some of our time structure, time constraints do that, right? Like our systems kind of have that built in, right? And I saw some other hands. Am I missing anybody? Okay, go for it.
I just want to say, like, as an RA, I've noticed that, like, when the fall sports move in, it tends to be like a concentration of athletes in one area.
Yeah.
It could be coincidence, or maybe like they're grouping them together. But I feel like when you have like even just a week before everyone else comes here, especially freshmen, like getting those friends on the football team or soccer team or whatever, I feel like that's kind of like it really kind of starts to build that divide even before students get on campus. And I noticed that like during orientation, like the first day, there's really like athletes and then like new students, like, and I was like the first day.
You know, actually one of the TEC teachers told me about the first day TEC lecture, right? And they walked in and there is like one section of Mills A that's like a giant swath of gray t-shirts, right? And It's almost saying athletes come sit here because this is where your people are, right? Like in my fantasy, every freshman is issued with a gray t-shirt with something on it, right? It doesn't have, so that we're not.
Every first year student is issued a common t-shirt for
Yes,
orientation.
but and I love the orientation shirts, they're gorgeous, but they look different. Right, like it's not the visual, right? And so I don't know, I'm not like the marketing guru, y'all are, right,
Oh,
from
I'm certainly.
econ department, right? But yeah, like people aren't even reading the shirts, they see the shirt, right? And it's automatically okay, right? And this is kind of faculty mentioning this, like, wow, that's a little intimidating. Yeah, go ahead.
And you know, kind of thinking about the thing on the screen here too. I'm also wondering, so like I was a student during when some of these conversations were prominent, but then when I showed up as a faculty member, I think that I was around when there were echoes of these like big conversations that were happening. So it's kind of interesting to think about that, but also I ponder, right, whether or not sometimes we think about these echoes of this pretty contentious fight that became about something more than the mascot, right? If those echoes are now affecting people who are not around it all, right? Because I think that's something that we might want to pay attention to.
Yeah, well, I mean, in fact, if faculty are still like triggered by the big fights that happened in the 2006, 2007, 2008, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? I mean, if faculty are reacting from that place, I mean, we communicate all kinds of stuff to students without trying, right? And that could very well be one of the messages that they have, certainly not, I mean, faculty aren't uniform, we're not all one person, right? But that is something that happens that we have never had a campus-wide conversation, right, that actually allows us to think about that, right, and think about what we might want to do. And I'm seeing a student with their hand up here.
Kind of building off of the faculty piece, I've noticed as a student part of it, when I go in and I have to go up and talk to one of my professors, like, hey, I'm gonna miss this class because I have to be gone for this meet. Some professors get really upset about it, and they're like, well, you're missing all of my class for all this stuff.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's part of my time to
Yeah.
and I'm letting you know ahead of time. And it's like they hear the echoes from past things, and they're kind of like dropping it on the student. As well.
And they may not even, right, let's see, here's the thing, like I don't think I'm the only one who remembers there's no issue here, shut up, stop talking, go away, right? Like that's a big thing. And if we're emanating that around our students and we're blaming, any group of students for stuff that's really our baggage, that's bad, right? And it is, we're not doing our jobs from lack of self-awareness, right? And we love it that we have hands here. James, you kind of been waiting.
Yeah, I was thinking about like one thing I asked students about, like just tell me what the differences are. How do people characterize the differences? What are the issues? And one thing that students brought up is the term NARP.
Yeah,
which I like
hate
never
that.
heard of before.
Yeah, I
like,
hate
I
that.
was
They're
like,
not allowed to
what?
say it.
Never.
They're not allowed to say it.
It's
Right.
not a
Like
Hendrix thing.
you'll get in
It's
a
a
lot of trouble as an
It
athlete
sounds
if
like
you
in-
call
So
someone
is it function as
Yeah.
a slur in a sense?
Yes,
Okay.
it's pretty bad. It's nasty.
Non-athlete
really
regular
So, like-
person.
But I think that's important,
Yeah.
right? Because you're talking about no monsterizing.
Mhm.
And in this
That's
context,
what
that's like something that we have to talk about, which is if there are slurs that justify division,
Yeah.
that justify lack of unity, we have to I think we have to say, there are people who use that term, and we should not use that term. And why not, right? Like-
Now, to be fair, Hendrix didn't invent that term. I
No.
think we inherited it from the internet. But
Right, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
do people use it? Is it a problem? What's the deal with that? Right?
okay. Oh, so many hands.
So it's a spicy take.
All right.
Yeah, okay. Go for it.
I think that one's hard because I think like as a person like the coach sport and play sport, I've seen that word used like way more by people who don't play sports and not play sports.
Yeah.
And I think throwing the word slur in there is
That's it. Yeah, I know. It's not
Yeah.
really a slur.
Yeah,
Well,
but
it's-
I do just think like even like putting
Uh-huh.
that in a room with people where like it's so like charged already, it's just like
Yeah.
hard for
Mhm.
people to realize that. I think that is
Mhm.
monitoring saying that people are using slurs.
So
Right,
many,
yeah, good.
so many ways to misunderstand each other,
And then I will
right?
say about the gray t-shirts.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever worn. Basically, that's a tenders across around campus. But a lot of people have been working for this since they were 4 years old. And like thinking about playing in college
Yeah.
and like dreaming about it, and like having meetings with like tens of coaches and like on the phone calls with like their parents, like their grandparents, and like trying to figure out how to afford
course.
a D3 school where
Yeah.
they can like play, there's no scholarship. And
Uh-huh.
all the people are really, really proud that they have the
Yeah.
ability to play at such a high level
Of course.
and want to be able to like
Mhm.
wear that and like really proud of themselves for like the time, effort, and dedication that they put in. And I just think that at Hendrix there's also a lack of pride for like everyone.
Yeah.
I think like a greater
Mhm.
scale, and I do think that creating something for people where that like
Yeah.
brings everyone together instead of like trying to find ways
That's
to get people to
the
stop doing
coolest.
something.
Like,
Like
uh-huh.
creating a space for students to come in and help design t-shirts in the student store instead
Yes.
of the terrible
Exactly,
fonts I've seen.
exactly. That's
It's so
organic to the
T-shirts.
community. Yeah, I mean, and I would like to see a campus where everybody in every category is rooting for each other and pulling for each other, right? My partner died in 2019, and when she went to high school, I have no idea how this happened. Miraculously, the football players loved the Classics Club, right? Like at the Classics Club would come and cheer for football, and football would come to the Latin play and cheer, and they all and I didn't learn like how that happened, right? But I'm like in my dream, right? We're able to build like that, something very much like that, because we all need to be on each other's team. We need to be Team Hendrix, right? And the only way that's going to happen is if all the stakeholders, if we can do that for each other. Love in the hands. Just I'm kind of maybe who's been waiting. You've been waiting very long, very patiently.
I'm sorry for not speaking sooner, because I feel like I have to say it's actually important for once. There was an article by SB Nation that came out 12 or 13 years ago about Hendrix adding a football team.
Oh.
And everyone on campus I've talked to has never read this for some odd reason. But I think the key points of it were two: money and culture on campus. Money aspect, I don't want to get into because that's pretty charged. The culture side of it, I really gathered was a lot of people were fine with football just being added, and I don't see why not. Really, the danger that people saw in it was a lowering of academic standards and kind of essentially making the college more like a high school.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel just by my research, like I'm in classes, I do tons of research about Hendrix, is that I think it's kind of shifted more towards a high school rather than college.
Oh, what do you mean in terms of academic?
In terms of academic
Achievement
focus.
or focus?
And then
Okay.
I think more just,
Yeah.
I think culturally.
I think okay, so I'm gonna try and sort of remove some of the
I'm not trying to like choose
no,
anyone.
I totally know that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I totally get that, right? That what I would excerpt is right that there were faculty who were talking about the issues of cultural change, right? Most definitely at that time. Those were never talked about, right? And so that we really did change our student population, right, to be many more athletes. There was no plan for the grown-ups to actually bridge those boundaries. Right now, I mean, 20 years ago, I've also had so many wonderful advisees who are history majors, who are athletes, who are amazing people, right? Like I have learned a whole lot better since 2008, right? And know a whole lot more than I did now, right? I would love for, right, and so without, sort of monsterizing or value judgments, right? But I mean, I think, frequently people have this kind of sense that our culture is shifted. Keep in mind also that it's really normal as a student, like by the time you're a senior, to be like, yeah, the freshmen just aren't as cool. Like, I mean, you know, they're fine, they're nice, you know, but they're just not as cool as us, right? Like just, oh, we're not calling, oh no, we're just, you know, they're not this enough, they're not that enough, stuff like that. Totally normal. I went to a liberal arts college. I lived through that experience too, right? So I think there's a little, yeah, there's so much going on here, right? But yeah, I think you're right. There is a sense of cultural change, but it has not been nurtured. Right, it hasn't been done collectively and organically within the community. And who else has been waiting at ages? Go ahead.
Well, kind of adding off that academic thing, I could see the perspective because with like Division I and Division II athletes, they are dropped into classes. They don't really get a choice in what they take. They typically tend to be the easier classes so that they can focus on the sports. But here at Division III, we don't get scholarships for athletics. We're getting our own education the way that we want to get it. We get the classes that we want to choose. We get to major in what we want to major in, and we have more say at Division III level. While at Division I and II, they have less say. Where I can see at like a U of A area,
Wow, I didn't know that. Honestly, that's abusive of students. Right, unless you're going to go on to be a pro career.
Well, like with the football players, a lot of them do want to go into the pros.
Well,
that's why not parents,
yeah,
coaches are putting them in these classes to allow them to focus on football.
A lot of people want that, but how many people actually make it, right?
Exactly,
And then what? Yeah. They've got a degree and a lot of injuries and no, you know, no insurance, right, to back them up. Chris, why don't you go ahead?
I think that there was talk and worry about the culture, and we did not process that as a group, and we should have more. I think there was a lot of reason not to talk much about that. I think there were lots of other things that were shifting the culture too. The culture.
It was
moving,
huge. It was huge.
right? And it is moving, and that's. I don't think it was sports exactly. I think everything was changing. Some of my football players, students are my very best. The athletes tend to be highly motivated and organized here, and that's a skill set that we could love to spread to everyone. Right? That's a way we can integrate.
So absolutely, and okay, your hand has been up.
Well, I do think I just push back a little bit on sports coming in and changing culture. I feel like that's part of the issue that we're running into is that we're saying that athletes are coming in and ruining a culture. You're saying changing, but effectively saying in the negative context that is ruining a culture. When I feel like Hendrix is sort of, at least when I came into it, what I thought it was, and still do think it is sort of like a melting pot of people who find a safe space in a especially state that does not give as much immunity as Hendrix does. And I think that athletes coming into that often feel from the other side. Like I know I came in and felt it right away that I felt scrutinized immediately for simply being an athlete. And I think we've done a lot of work to change that, but I feel like that sort of talk and context makes an issue that doesn't need to be started.
I just want to affirm that. And here's the thing, if you're feeling that from faculty, what the hell? No, I'm just saying, like, there's no, I mean, that's, but anyway, so here's the thing, you don't deserve to feel like that, right? As a community, we need to brainstorm ways that, that don't reify stereotypes, right? And stigmatize people in really unfair ways. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I think you're exactly right. And I think that what happened back then was that athletics wasn't something we came up with. It was something that was right. But you're exactly right. You should come here and feel like this is for me too. And all of us should feel that. And it's our job to make that happen. You're exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe just some context too. So I actually, I don't know whether I was fortunate or an unfortunate soul who happened to be on one of the student SCAT representatives. So it's me and it was JD actually.
So SCAT is what?
SCAT, the student SCAC, which is the conference that we're about
okay.
enter. So it happened to be the time that those representatives were also on the committee that was working to get football here. So I ended up on that committee. And then I ended up in the borough at the time, which was in Hewlin, right? Actually explaining why this was going to be okay. You all know I don't like public speaking. That's terrifying.
Keep finding yourself in these
Let's do that in front of the
Sorry, please
introductory people.
continue.
Yeah,
Please,
yeah, yeah.
Did I, were you there? Anyway,
Uh-huh.
so the thing is, right, like,
Yeah.
it wasn't actually just football, right? Because that, what predated that was
yeah.
actually
Mhm.
women's field hockey
Yeah.
and lacrosse.
Sure.
And on a student level, I'll say that like, and I think we have a little bit of this problem now, which is that like, we're not all perfect people. And from time to time, you have a few folks who are sort of making the entire enterprise look less than positive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would like us to get away from the idea that like we've got a few people over here who are contributing to society, a few people who are here, and then like segregating them entirely, right? Like
Amen.
I'm actually really frustrated with like we're talking about athletes now we're talking about that. Like, I know it's not meaningless, but I'm also like if you start talking about people as others, then we're gonna find ourselves in a real problem here, and it's not gonna go away.
And so here, so I know, so this whole conversation is problematic, right? Like this whole conversation has got like tripwires in it. Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Yeah, and I mean, so here's the thing, like, we've got to make it so that everyone is a warrior, right? Like, or whatever, right? We're Team Hendrix, right? Like we are unified. Yeah, we're like not, yeah, we've got to find a way to say it.
I mean, the butterfly could have like that.
Love butterfly. Love butterfly.
Orange and black, and it would be like
Yeah.
kind of sarcastic. It would be even critique power. Like it'd be amazing. Talk about conquest.
Guys,
So that's sort of like,
Laura's finishing.
Sorry.
Yeah.
within that moment, right? I also think that that's gonna help the conversation surrounding football, right? It was actually specifically associated with lacrosse, unfortunately, which I think by JD was in the room. And that was an unfair stereotype then, right? As is an unfair stereotype for our entire police department now. The other piece that we're like, oh, well, we've got the geography. We also had a pandemic. Which took our students out of conversation with one another, right? So like, I remember, and I didn't think this was a little bit true before the pandemic, maybe I'm misreading it, but at least when I was here as an athlete, like, people went to basketball games because it was a thing you did on Friday night. You maybe didn't even like basketball. Like, people maybe never watched basketball again after they graduated. I went to orchestra and theater not because I knew anything about it, but because my friends were in it, and I wanted to support that, right? And so, like, we gotta find ways to get people going places again together. Totally honest, we gotta. I hate the to-go boxes. I mean, as a faculty member, like, I love them.
Yeah.
But I hate them for us because it takes people out of that very shared space. And a simple fact is, like, you just overcrowd the cafeteria, so we're gonna have to find someone else to sit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, we gotta find ways. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, can faculty do workouts with a warrior or something? Right? Like,
Something.
you all teach me how to use some of the equipment over there, right? Like, I'm there and I like get annoyed with something.
You're not the
I think when Amy Weaver was bringing back pickleball, I think there's people who are working on this, right? It's just that they're siloed, and if we were talking together, imagine all the great ideas, and synergy that could be happening, and we could be, going to each other's stuff and supporting each other,
That's
that.
fine with that.
Awesome. So.
I'm making an effort. We need more places.
Awesome, yay. Oh, there's lots of stuff going on campus, by the way, right? Like, shout out to the Candace and the lunch group of faculty, students, all that kind of stuff, right?
I think a really interesting thing that we've been talking about in like my explorations in TEC in both of them is a mini HIP project where you like go and take photos at different events on campus that are all from different like categories. And so there's like theater shows and like football games and like different activities, and that's a good way for like the like combine.
Yeah, I think a lot of faculty are really excited about that one. That's come up in faculty meeting and in conversations, and it's we've also been trying to discuss ways to build in time where students can actually do stuff like that, right? Which is a whole nother set of questions, but.
So you talked about the geography, the structure being this thing. And when I walk into the CAF, I feel like a little weird, like what's happening here.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that structure
is one of the things that's a problem that we need to mess around with. So can we organize the tables differently? Like, if they're like
I propose,
Hogwarts houses.
Oh my God, I've been wanting that for years, right? Like if we had, okay, so you know how they have banners in the Hogwarts, yeah, and they have banners that unfurl when Dumbledore like flips his wand with all the house. The thing is, we need something to deal with all the acoustical nonsense that's going on in there, right? Banners, they don't have to be Hogwarts, but you can't talk because nobody can hear, right? Like there's ways like that. I know we can't spend money, that's the other thing, right? But
Acoustic paneling.
tables, yeah, the tables say junior high to me, and they say, oh my God, where are your friends? You're gonna be sitting alone, all by yourself, right? Like, this is, you know, it's,
So how freaked out would the students be if
Very.
I proposed that in Senate actually.
Mhm.
When I was a student senate, I proposed a half mixer day. And they got shut down.
There's faculty working on that already, right? Like if you email me, Dr. Skoke, I can hook you up with those people, right? But I think that's awesome, right? And yeah, there's lots of groups on campus. I think you'd be really excited about that, right? Like mixer day, and you know, the idea is it doesn't cost anything, right? So yeah.
Unfortunately, we run out of time.
Yes.
10 minutes over what we wanted to do because of our delay. But I wanted to thank Dr. Skoke for leading the discussion today.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Champasy will be leading the discussion on how microeconomics can be observed in the professional sports labor market. And we'll talk more about bridges across Harkrider. So thanks everyone for coming. We really appreciate you being there. Thanks so much.
Thanks to all of you. James.
Yeah.